We own franchises in 4 different leagues that play at the highest competitive level in the world. And so, analogous to traditional sport, the model I often reference is that we're building the Madison Square Garden or the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment with esports at our core.
Next up, I have Chris Overholt, CEO and President of Overactive Media, trading on the TSX Venture under the symbol OAM. Chris, welcome.
Good morning, James.
Chris, what is the business of Overactive Media?
Yeah, we're in the business of esports at the highest level, and the way I often describe it is, if you think about the many tens of millions of people all over this country and all over the world that love hockey, again, it's played at multiple levels, but at the apex of that game's highest expression would be the National Hockey League. We own franchises in 4 different leagues that play at the highest competitive level in the world. And so, analogous to traditional sport, the model I often reference is that we're building the Madison Square Garden or the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment with esports at our core. Mm-hmm. And again, as we grow this company and develop its vision, it's becoming increasingly clear to us that we have an opportunity here to really redefine what it is to be a 21st century sports media and entertainment company for today's generation of fans who, of course, as you would appreciate, are choosing to engage in sport and media and making different choices different than my generation and ours.
Mm-hmm. And how do you monetize that?
Yeah, it comes through a number of different streams, but I would again encourage you to think about it as traditional sports model, and I'll use Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment perhaps as a best compare. So that organization owns franchise teams that play in the most important sports leagues in the world. That's true for us as well. We own franchises that we've paid for upfront to acquire the protections that come with owning a franchise in a city-based or regional market. We own the exclusive rights to develop our position, our brand position, our teams in our market. And most importantly, we get to share in all the revenue streams that the league produces, just like the NHL, just like the NBA. So we drive revenue streams locally out of sponsorship and various media content opportunities that we develop in around our team, our brand, our players. But we also get to, again, sit inside the enterprise growth of these leagues as they take shape. And so we share in the marketing partnership deals that the league's done, in the sponsorship deals, in the licensing, in the broadcast rights deals, in all of those ways, again, just simply analogous to traditional sport. These are the most sustainable business and economic models available to anybody invested in the esports space today. And we are distinct insofar as Overactive Media has 4 franchises. We are, in fact, the only company in the world that owns 4 franchises in the only franchise leagues that are available in the global ecosystem of esports today.
Oh, okay. And which teams are those?
Toronto Defiant and Call of Duty's Toronto Ultra. Toronto Defiant plays in the Overwatch League. Again, Toronto Ultra play in the Call of Duty League. We own 2 teams in Europe as well that play in the European League of Legends. That's our Mad Lions brand playing out of Madrid, Spain. And we also play in a league called Flashpoint that we own, in fact, with other team-based organizations. And that game is a game called Counter-Strike.
What is the compound annual growth rate of the global esports audience at this point?
Yeah, so I'll point you to a couple of things. The growth projected when we started to get into this business back in 2018 was projected to be double-digit CAGR growth from an audience perspective. That has been true and is predicted to continue to be true for the coming years. Similarly, the revenue has been growing for the global industry at a double-digit rate as well, heading towards 1.5, 1.6 billion by 2023. But yet esports still a relative infant as compared to the broader gaming community. So the industry of gaming has grown to be a $175 billion global business. The industry of esports as an expression of that is about 1.75 billion today. So we see massive upside, in fact, arbitrage opportunity on an average revenue per fan basis that will give Overactive Media, we think, a leading position in the global space.
And who would be your biggest competitors in the space?
Well, it depends how you think about it, or how you ask the question in the context of share of wallet or who we compete with in these leagues. So, I would say, and back to the question you asked earlier, this industry has grown now. The global gaming industry has grown now to outstrip the movie, music, television, all those traditional forms of entertainment that we've grown up with and enjoyed for all these years. Those are actually not as significant an industry as the gaming industry is on a global basis today. So I suppose in the context of who we compete with economically around the consumer share of wallet, we compete with those industries head on. But actually, what you're starting to see is the mashup that exists around the esports culture and the gaming culture broadly. Again, aligned to music and in some cases even traditional sport. In
Hmm.
the leagues that we compete with the major cities, as you would imagine, in North America. Again, these franchise opportunities are held in major cities here in this side of the water, in cities like New York and Miami and Chicago and LA, of course. So we play teams from other leagues, or from other cities rather, in the league. But these are global leagues as well. And so they stretch to, in the case of Overwatch, for example, there are 4 teams in China. There's a team in London, in Paris, and in Seoul, Korea. In the case of Call of Duty, a team in London and a team in Paris. And we, in the League of Legends, we actually play in a European-based league, and so play teams from all over Europe. So again, these are global leagues, and the reason that's important is because as a result, they scale massively. So these are global audiences for these games. They're not particular to North America, and they're played on platforms like Twitch and YouTube that scale native digital. And so, I'll give you this example. In my background, of course, is traditional sport. I started with the Raptors in 1996, and in those days, we were broadcasting the Raptors on City TV. We would be fortunate to do a television audience on a national basis in those years. For a midweek game, we might do 45 or 50,000 watching it at that time. Our Mad Lions played their first season opener in Europe this year to a concurrent viewing audience of more than 500,000 people. So when you think about that audience, how it scales global and native digital, and when you think about the fact that the brands that are invested in our business are, and as they always have been, focused on the development of that 18 to 34 market, that audience is taking different decisions than you and I took to engage in sports media and entertainment. And Overactive Media is positioned to deliver that audience to those brands. So for that reason, we're starting to make really significant headway in the local sponsorship element of our business. We have now almost 20 marketing partners around the world, including 10 or so in Spain and another 10 here in Toronto and Canada. Our most recent announcements include TD Bank, Kraft, Bud Light. Bell is our seminal marketing partner, our premier and founding partner here in Canada, and a very significant investor in Overactive Media. So we've got a really, really great position carved out for ourselves here, and feel pretty great about what we've been able to accomplish so far.
Chris, I'm curious as to whether the audience for esports, which is essentially people watching other people play video games, is that audience growing at the expense of the conventional online, or rather the conventional broadcast viewing sports audience, or is it happening in addition to that audience, or a combination of the two?
I think both questions or statements are true. So it is the case that the audience that is starting to take shape around esports and broadly the gaming industry, and around platforms like Twitch and YouTube and TikTok and others, these audiences are doing so at the expense of traditional sport, and I would say broadly traditional media. This generation of 18 to 34, I would say younger millennials and new Gen Zs, and certainly we would expect in behind them the Gen Alphas. They spend their time watching YouTube and engaging on again platforms like Twitch, at the expense of consuming traditional sport and media as we've grown up to know it. It's also the case that statistically, these major leagues, these traditional sports, are aging out. And the reason that's relevant, again, without knowing exactly how old you are, I'm in my mid 50s now. I've been watching traditional sport for a long, long time. But I'm not the target audience for brands like Bell and TD Bank and Skip the Dishes and Canon and Universal Music and all of those that are engaged with us here and around the world. That audience that they're seeking to get to is the 18 to 34 audience, the audience that, again, is on these platforms. And so if you're the NFL or the NBA or the NHL and you're looking in on your audience today, again, it's typically approaching or having already surpassed the age of 50. And brands are not interested in getting to that audience so much as they are the life cycle of marketing that comes with the 18 to 34. I'll also say that, evidence of this is supported by those that are invested with us and around us in these very same leagues that we've taken our position in. So as an example, the Overwatch League, the Call of Duty League, we were invested in this early, but so too was Robert Kraft, who owns the New England Patriots. He was, in fact, the first purchaser of an Overwatch franchise. Philip Anschutz, who owns Arsenal, the Kroenke family, the Wilpon family in New York, the Wilfs in Minnesota, Ted Leonis and Peter Guber. These are the biggest owners of traditional sports business and teams in the world. And they're all invested, not just in esports, they're invested in the very same leagues that we're invested in. They sit at the Board of Governors table with us in these leagues. And that for us is a pretty good indication that we're on the right track. They see the same things that we do, that their audience against traditional sport is aging out. And while nobody on this call is signaling the demise of the NFL or the NBA, it is the case that at a minimum, if you own a Major League Baseball team, a hockey team, or an NFL team, you have to be thinking about your next generation of fans, where they're spending their time and what they're consuming in the way of media. And the simple fact is, it's esports.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Fascinating story. This sounds like, it almost sounds to me like esports is just on the cusp of going mainstream. And for our audience who are primarily investors, it sounds like this is sort of getting in on the ground floor at this point, just before that transition to the mainstream. Is that more or less accurate, or are we away from mainstream adoption?
No, I think I would encourage you not to think of it as something that is arriving to the conversation, but rather it has arrived. The amount of money and investor money that it's attracting, the support that it's receiving from media broadly, and certainly specifically on these new platforms. It's not only having arrived and starting to establish itself in the mainstream. Anybody who might be watching your show at this moment would only need to speak to any of those in their household or in their extended family. Again, if you went to a son or a daughter or a niece or a nephew and asked them about platforms like Twitch or YouTube, of course, if you asked them about their favorite esports teams or their favorite influencers, this has been going on around all of us in our 50s for years now, frankly. And yes, so we have a first mover position in all of this. And again, evidence of the support that we've received as a result of that first mover position. As you mentioned, we just listed on the TSXV last week, but privately up to that point, we've raised more than $100 million to establish our company, build out our franchise holdings, and work up our operating group to run this business for the next decade or more. So again, we're well positioned in all of this. We're born and bred right here in Toronto, Canada, and with a global headquarters in Liberty Village. And we're excited about where we're headed with this business. Again, we really believe we're building a multi-billion-dollar 21st century sports media and entertainment company for today's generation of fans.
Okay, Chris, that's the great introduction to the company. It sounds like you're really making progress there. We'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, James.
You bet.